Welcome to the October the 14th, 1997 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of our city and some of the people that are important to have made that history and that are continuing to make history today. We're very pleased today. This is our history tape number 318, and we're delighted today. We're continuing our celebration of Hispanic heritage, and this is our final segment for this year for Hispanic heritage, and we're real pleased to have the Del Bosques with us today. Frank Del Bosque, we want to welcome you to the set, young man.
Thank you, Ruthie. It is a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful.
And an honor to be with you especially.
Thank you.
And this is my wife, Eloisa.
Eloisa, Ruthie Jackson is very pleased to welcome you here as a very special lady in my life, in the past and currently. We're really glad to have you with us today to share your lives and to document the history of a very, what I call a very first-class Hispanic family in Grand Prairie, Texas, that are real, true Grand Prairians that have really been important to our community, and I want to thank y'all for sharing your lives. And can we begin with Frank, Eloisa?
Fine.
All right. Frank, would you look out into your camera and tell us a little bit about the history of Frank? Give us your parents' names, where they lived when you were born, and some good stuff about Frank, all right?
Good stuff, huh?
All
Sounds
right.
good.
All right.
Well, just to let you know, we're going on our 30th year here in Grand Prairie. We moved from South Texas. McAllen, Texas is our hometown, actually, where we moved. But I was born in Monterrey, Mexico.
Good.
And I was raised by a single parent, my mother, which is a very important part of my life.
Would you give us her name?
Her name was Carmen del Bosque Velázquez.
All right.
I carry the Del Bosque name because that's the name that I choose because of her being the one that raised me.
All right.
And so, but she actually was born in a small town outside, or small village, I should say, outside of Monterey, and then make her way to Monterey to work, met a young man. They married. The history that she gives me, there were I had a brother and a sister.
All right.
They were a little bit, well, one was stillborn, and the other died right after, probably after he was born sometime. It was some difficult times then for my mother, which was probably back in the 20s and 30s.
All right.
I was born in 1942.
All right.
And
Where?
in Monterrey, Mexico.
In Monterey, okay.
And then, about the age of maybe 2 or 3, my father passed away in a car accident.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I never had the privilege to meet him or know him real well. But I do have kind of some fond memories about him, spending meal times with him, visiting his parents and some uncles.
Yes.
His first name was Luis.
All right.
On my mother's side, like I had said before, she comes from a small village where most of her brothers, and she was from a family of about 10 children.
Would you give us her name?
Well, her mother was, her name was Carmen. And like I said, after in Monterey, when I was born, we came actually to visit an uncle of mine in McAllen, Texas.
All right. You want to name your uncle?
My uncle is named Ponciano, which is kind of a rare name, but a beautiful name, I think.
Yes.
And he had been in the United States legally for probably, at that time, probably 10, maybe 15 years. Mm-hmm. And he happened to be the oldest of the family. And he had his own business. He was iceman. He carried ice from by the block. He sold it by the block from house to house. He was married to a girl from the town, had one child at that time. By this time, it was like in the probably 1949, or probably in the 50s already. I celebrated my 7th birthday there when we were visiting. And right next door to him, or to my uncle's house, lived his sister-in-law. I do not recall her name, but I recall the young lady that made me the birthday. And it was just ourselves, my mother, my uncle, my aunt, his sister-in-law, and her, we celebrated. And the young man wasn't there, my cousin. Those are the fun memories that I have about my uncle. The one thing that stands out about him, he had just one arm. Apparently he lost it in one accident or something. The story goes that he was trying to make, if you recall, back in those days, there was no single lights on the car. He was taking out his hand to make a turn, and somebody hit him and lost his arm. Consequently, of the accident. I remember him especially because he used to be real close to my mother.
Yes.
We used to live, had a rent house across the street, and he would, always be there for her.
Yes.
And by the way, my wife her family lived just a block away from there. We never knew each other.
You didn't?
No, we never knew each other. But it was many years after that we came to realize, or I did, that we were that close and never came to know each other. This was in '53. We'd come over to the United States, and then my uncle, persuaded my mother to get a passport,
Yes.
and we did. We were legal residents of the state of Texas, United States, and from then on I started going to school.
And where?
Right there in McAllen.
In McAllen. Oh,
yeah,
right.
they had a school by the name of Roosevelt. Roosevelt, and it was a beautiful school. It's still standing. When I go back home, I usually go and visit it just outside. It's now become a different type of, it's not a school anymore. It's kind of where they have a program for underprivileged children and et cetera, From there, I started school. Then we moved by this time, an aunt of mine had also moved to the United States with her family,
Yes.
her husband and several children they had. And they lived on the west side of town. My mother was very close to my aunt, whose name was Maria. So we rented a house right next to them,
Yes.
My uncle kept coming around, and also by this time another uncle had moved to the same town, a younger brother to my uncle and to my sister, my aunt. And her family started growing. They were close.
Yes.
There were more brothers that they stayed behind in Mexico. They had no wish to come over or to be part of the family in the United States. By this time, I went through from the first grade all the way through high school in McAllen.
All right.
I went through my junior high
Yes.
in a school named Travis,
Travis, okay.
one of our heroes in the Alamo.
Yes, yes.
And went through McAllen High School.
Okay.
And very fortunately, I met my wife there.
At
And
that
this
high
was
school?
in 1962.
Okay, that was a real good year, wasn't it?
Very good year.
All right, while we were in elementary school and growing up, did you have special teachers or special people that were your mentor that just really said, Frank, you can really excel and study and do all the good stuff?
Well, fortunately, all through school, we had very good teachers,
Yes.
both Anglo teachers and Hispanic teachers.
Yes.
But I think in my 5th grade, I had a Miss White,
Yes.
and she was our math teacher, and
Yes.
she was very good. She was always seeing that we learned the lesson for the day,
Yes.
which making sure that we took our homework home.
She was tough.
She was tough.
Oh, yes.
And she was the type of person that when she was teaching, that was her time,
Yes.
not our time. So she made sure that everybody pay attention.
You didn't goof off.
I didn't goof off.
Yeah.
And in my junior high, which was the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, for one period of time, in the 7th grade, I had a Mrs. Flores and a Mrs. Longoria. Mrs. Flores was the English teacher,
Yes.
and she also stressed very much the importance of education, which stuck with me for the longest time. And then Mrs. Longoria was also a math teacher.
All right, did you have a favorite subject in high school when you got ready to graduate and to go out into the world and earn your own living? Was there some real special, or did you do sports or anything like that?
Well, I was fortunate to play sports.
All right.
But I loved, participating in almost anything that was available to generate friendships with other people,
Yes.
to be sociable. But my favorite subject was, I have to say, was math. It was
Yes.
easy. And but also history. And I had a teacher by the name of Dorothea Brown.
All right.
And I remember her name because one year, or that year that I had her, we had to write a paper, and I did it. I don't know. I chose transportation. I went all the way back from the Dark Ages all the way up to the present time, and
Yes.
and I made an A on it, and I was
Yes.
surprised.
Yes.
I was very surprised, even though I have to say that I did a lot of footnoting, copying a lot of little quotes from the books that I read. And that math was the other one. I like geometry a lot too, which I've kind of forgotten about it, but it touched that part of my life a lot. And we graduated, or I graduated, we both graduated in 1962.
All right, we're going to leave you at McAllen High School, and now we're going to catch up with Eloisa.
Okay.
Start out by giving us your genealogy. Tell us about your family. Anything you want to say, Eloisa. This is your camera.
Thank you, Ruthie. Thank you for having us here.
Yes.
You're a beautiful lady. We've known you for many years, and we
Yes.
love you dearly.
Thank you.
My name's Eloisa del Bosque. I was born Eloisa Chavez from a family of 10 children. I'm number 8. I was born in Mission, Texas. At the age of 5, my family moved to McAllen. I lived in McAllen until I was in the 6th grade. And then I moved to West Texas with one of my sisters. In those times, when there was a large family, the older children took care of the younger children.
Yes.
So my sister, when I was born, I had a sister who was 17 at that time, took care of me. And I grew to be very attached to my sister Tony.
Yes.
So when they moved to West Texas, I moved with them.
Yes.
And they had 4 children of their own, but my sister and brother-in-law always saw me as one of their children.
Yes.
And I went to school in Imperial, Texas, Fort Stockton, Monahans. And then during my senior year, I came back home to live with my parents.
Okay.
And like Frank said, that's when we met, when we were seniors.
When you moved back to McAllen, Texas?
When I moved back to live with my parents.
All right, we need the name of your parents. We need your father and mother's name, and your mother's maiden name, if you have that.
My father's name was Lázaro Chavez.
All right.
His parents, his mother came from Hidalgo,
Yes.
Hidalgo, Texas, and his father came from a little town close to Monterrey, Mexico.
All right.
And my father was born in Hidalgo, Texas. My mom was born in Reynosa, Tamaulipas, in Mexico, across the border from Hidalgo. Her father came from Golial, right next to San Antonio.
All right.
He was a musician. And as a musician, he did a lot of traveling. And he was in Reynosa playing at a dance when he met my grandmother.
All right.
So he married her, and they lived there in Reynosa.
Give us her name, your grandmother's name.
Her name was Virginia Hernandez.
All right.
And my mother's name was Rebecca Lozano because of her dad.
Because of her dad.
But her great-grandfather came from Spain.
How wonderful.
And she used to tell me a lot of beautiful stories that her grandfather and her grandfather used to pass on to her brothers and sisters, and they passed them on to her because she came from a family of 7 children, and she was the baby.
Well, since you were number 8 of the 10, are there any of the other brothers or sisters you'd like to name drop on your tape?
It's too many.
All right.
That's too many.
That's too many. Do you have any that live in the Grand Prairie, Dallas area?
Yes, I have
Why
a
don't
brother.
you name those?
I have a brother that lives here. His name is Gonzalo Chavez.
All
He
right.
lives here in Grand Prairie.
All right.
And then I have another brother that lives in Dallas. His name is Rene Chavez.
All right.
And out of the 4 boys, there was 4 boys and 6 girls. They're the only 2 that are living right now.
I see.
And then there was 6 of us girls. There's 5 of us living.
That is great.
Both my parents have passed away
Yes.
in McAllen.
Yes.
But my other sisters live in McAllen, and we have a lot of beautiful friends back home.
All right. And as you went to school to begin with in McAllen, before you went out to Fort Stockton, Imperial, and Monahans, Texas, did you have any favorite people there other than your 17-year-old sister that you loved and adored?
And I still do.
Yeah.
You mean favorite?
At school?
Mr. Martinez was my 6th grade teacher, and he was always encouraging us to get an education, to go to school. He was always talking to us about the value of an education. And another favorite teacher that I had was Mrs. Ross, and her daughter Polly and I were best friends. Yes. We went to different schools. We lived in 2 different parts of town, but yet we met through Mrs. Ross, and Polly and I were always very good friends.
Very good friends. All right, and going to all of the 3 schools in West Texas, what made you decide I need to go back home to McAllen?
When I was going to school in Imperial, I met a teacher. His name was Fred Canifex.
All right.
And we had a carnival, Halloween carnival in October, and his wife came to the carnival, and I met his wife. The Canifexes had a lot of influence, in my life.
Wonderful.
And they thought I didn't have parents to begin with, and they wanted to adopt me. Yes. But then I told them that I did have parents and brothers and sisters, and they even went to the valley to meet my parents. They wanted to adopt me, but of course, I said no. And my sister moved back home when I was at the end of my sophomore year.
Yes.
And I loved going to school in West Texas. That summer, the Canifexes went to visit me, and I asked my mom for permission to go back to West Texas to live with the Canifexes, and that I promised her I would come back my senior year.
Yes.
So she did, against her will. And after much crying, she finally gave in, and I went to live with the Canifexes in a little town by the name of Wickett.
Wickett, Texas.
Wickett, Texas.
Yes.
Ugly little town.
Yes.
But I lived there for a year with the Canifexes, and then at the end of my junior year, against their wishes and much crying on their side, I went back home to live with my parents and to graduate from McAllen High School.
Yes, and that was wonderful.
And
did you have favorite teachers at McAllen in that senior year that just really inspired you and you were glad you came back home?
Well, Mrs. White was one of them. She was my speech teacher. Mm-hmm. She was a very nice lady, a very good teacher. Mm-hmm.
Now, you went to the same high school. You graduated the same year. How did you finally find out that he was the young man? Did you chase him or did he chase you? That's what we need to find out today.
He chased me for 3 years.
3 years. Out of way.
He never gave up.
Eloisa, that is a good record.
I wanted to go into the convent, okay?
Yes.
So I had no plans to get married.
Uh-huh.
But Frank never gave up. And we dated. We dated for 3 years, and the first year we dated, it was as friends. And I kept reminding him, we're friends, Frank. That meant maybe holding hands. Maybe, but I even would remind him, friends don't hold hands, Frank.
Yes.
For a year.
Yes, for a year.
And finally, he asked me to be his girlfriend. And I think what I did it was our junior-senior prom.
I see. Do you have any remarks to make about the junior-senior prom to refute all of this?
Junior-senior prom.
It was an excellent junior-senior prom. Yes. And so you were his date for the junior-senior prom.
He was an excellent dancer. He still is.
Yes.
I was not a very good dancer.
Yes.
But it was a lovely night.
Yes.
And at the end of that night, he took me home. And he tricked me, Ruthie. He said, something got in my eye. And he, please look into my eye, something. And so, I didn't know any difference. Yeah. And I was very naive at that time, I really was. So I said, well, let me look, Frank. What got into your eye? And so when I did, he grabbed me and he kissed me.
The Wasn't he braver than Dick Tracy?
He said, you can slap me if you want to. He said, but it'll be, he said, I had to do it. He said, I waited a year for this.
Yes. And so you decided to be sweethearts from that time on, and then subsequently, I'm sure you married, and then you tell us what happened after that.
Well, we had 5 beautiful children.
All right, let's talk about
This is, I brought a wedding, well, this is when we're cutting the cake.
Yes, isn't
We
that
got married in November the 22nd of 64.
See, he remembers the date.
Oh, yes, he's
And
still.
everything.
I have to. Remember, November of 64.
Yeah.
It was, to us, it was a very beautiful wedding.
Yes.
Where
Where were you married?
we were married in McAllen, one of the 2 churches they had back in 64, and the name was Sacred Heart.
All right.
It's still standing, still there.
All right.
We planned our wedding together. We went from 0 to everything till the day we got married. We've been working together as a married couple for almost 33.
Almost 33
come
years.
November, we'll be
November,
at
it's going to be 33.
33 years married.
And we usually have a little celebration at home, and we renew our vows nearly every year.
Almost every year.
That is wonderful.
That's to confirm to the kids also. I think that the sense of marriage that we have is because of our families.
Yes.
Even though I was raised by a single parent, we saw the unity and the example of her family and my family. And I didn't have any brothers and sisters, but now I have. I
Yes.
gained 10 brothers and sisters right
Yes,
away, right
yes,
after we
by
married her.
marriage.
By
By
marriage.
marriage.
And
they're
they do
wonderful
love him
family.
dearly.
Yes. All right, and now how about these wonderful boys and girls that we have?
Five children. Frank Jr. is 32, 31. Yeah, and then Isaac
He's
is
second oldest.
30.
He's 30.
He's
yeah.
30 now. I can't remember that. He's 30, and this is his son, our grandson, little Isaac. And then, of course, this is Frank, and
Yes.
this is Michael. Michael is 25.
Yes.
Michael is married, and Isaac is married. Isaac has 2 children. Michael and Lindsay are expecting their first baby.
All right, Michael and Lindsay go together. All right, now give us the other ones.
Michael and Lindsay, and they just got married.
All right.
And this is we haven't got the big wedding pictures yet. This is a small wedding picture that Frank took.
Yes.
Okay, this is Michael and Lindsay. And then we
Alright.
have Melissa. Melissa is the 3rd child. She's 27 now.
She's covering up your face, Frank. Watch her.
She's 27, and she married a beautiful young man, very nice, James Tapera.
All right.
They both graduated from Texas Tech University.
All right.
And they've been married almost a year and a half now.
Yes.
They had a beautiful wedding. He comes from a large family of 9 children.
Good. That's great.
And
All right.
Isaac, let's see, Isaac married a beautiful young lady, Norma.
All right.
And Isaac graduated from Midwestern State University with a degree in engineering.
All right.
And she graduated from UTA
All right.
and with a degree in teaching and education.
That's wonderful.
But they have 2 children, and she stays home. And that's the reason that they moved. They live in Lockport, New York.
All right.
He's an engineer. He's an engineer for General Motors.
All right.
And this is Norma. She's our baby.
Yes.
She's 22,
Yes.
still going to school,
Yes.
in and out, still in school, and she lives at home.
All right.
And this is
She's the boss at home.
She's the boss.
Oh yes, she and the daddy. This is Isaac and Norma, our daughter-in-law, and our 2 beautiful grandchildren.
Name them.
Isaac, Santiago del Bosque, and Lisa Gabriela del Bosque. She's 3, and she just started preschool,
Yes.
and he's going to pre-kinder. They both go to St. John's Catholic Church in Lockport.
In
I mean, Catholic school, excuse me, in Lockport, New York.
In New York.
They live in New York.
That is so far away.
We were very fortunate up until a couple of months ago that Norma worked for American Airlines.
Yes.
So we used to go quite often,
Yes.
every 2 months,
Yes.
to see our grandchildren.
All right.
But she's gone back to school, and so she's had to get a part-time job somewhere else. But we're going, in 3 weeks, we go visit them again.
All right. Now we've got to we already have you out of high school, you're married, and we have all of these children. What do you do for a living?
Well, Ruthie, when we moved up here 30 years ago, I started working for LTV.
All right.
To me, it was a brand new experience. I took about a year training for aircraft mechanics or repairs
All right.
in Waco. And then went back home through the Employment Commission. They got me a job there. Sadly, I don't work for them anymore, but that gave me the initiative to live in this area, and it's beautiful here. I presently work for Xerox Incorporated
Yes.
out of New York. They've been here since the 60s in this area,
Yes.
and they're all over the world. I work as a warehouse person.
All
I
right.
enjoy my job a lot, and we're a small group of people, very united in what we do, and the company is a very good company to work for.
And it has color now.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well, they've had color for a long time.
Yes, they have. But some of us can't afford the color
That's right.
copier yet. We have to wait our turn, you
They
know.
got color.
Till we print a lot more money than we have
That's
today.
right.
All right. And now we have you as a substantial citizen making a living in Grand Prairie. But have you let her play around all of these years, having children and raising them, or does she do anything for a living?
Well,
I do now.
when we
I do now. I
do
work.
when we first moved up here, no, she decided to be a mother at
Yes.
home,
Yes.
take care of the kids. Two of her kids, our oldest, Frank and Isaac, were born in McAllen.
Yes.
Melissa, Michael, and Norma were born here, but they were born in Irving.
Yes.
That's what we did, but they were here in the Metroplex. Then about well, Norma was 2 years old?
I did
No,
a
when she
lot.
started school.
Yes, I did a lot of volunteer work.
Yes.
And then Norma was like 3 years old when I started doing volunteer work at Immaculate Conception Church and school, and I would substitute teach. And so Norma was always with me.
Yes.
And I think Norma was in the second grade when I started working part-time.
And what are you doing now?
But now I'm working for the school district here in Grand Prairie. I'm a
Yes.
secretary at Shady Grove Plus Center.
Yes.
I've been there 5 years,
And you love it?
and I love my work, yes. And I love working with our students. They're beautiful, they're very special.
Well, I've loved having y'all on the show. Do you know we have only 1 minute left on our history? Is there anything that either of you would like to say in that 1 minute?
I would like to say that it's been great living in Grand Prairie,
Yes.
knowing people like
Like
you.
you.
And I hope that we continue. And I recommend to all people that they even come here, visit, and maybe hope to decide. We've enjoyed being Grand Prairians for the last 30 years.
That's
A
wonderful.
beautiful place to live, lots of beautiful people, wonderful people. We have many, the Lord has blessed us with many, many
Many
friends.
friends.
Friends like you, Ruthie.
Thank you. So delightful for you to share your lives with us today. And thank you so very much for being such good corporate citizens. And thank you for your contribution to the Hispanic heritage that you're helping us to celebrate. And this is the end of this month. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.